You ready?
Yeah.
You ready? All right, hold on. Here we go.
What's going on, everyone? It's the My Aggie Nation Podcast. We're back this week. Per usual. Sometimes huge. I'm Travis Brown, MyAggieNation.com, the Eagle newspaper down here in Bryan, College Station, with the always dapper Zach Taylor, WTAW. What's going on, Zachary?
Not much, man. I am wearing a collared shirt right now, even though my picture, in my picture from the Zooms, because I don't have my own camera, it's the same picture every time, and it was a nice dress-up picture that we were taking engagement photos, so I figured I'd use that one.
I mean, now we're just following the tradition of talking about your engagement photo picture every time we do a podcast.
Pretty much.
So.
Well, you bring up what I'm wearing all the time.
I know. Anyway, we got a great episode for you today. A really, really fascinating one, actually. I got to give a hat tip to good old Mike Lucas over at KAGS, because he discovered this guy on Twitter. It's SEC StatCat. Have you heard of SEC StatCat?
I have.
Zach?
I have.
Are you an avid follower of his work?
I don't know if I'm an avid follower, but I have definitely seen him on the Twitters.
Well, SEC StatCat is a guy named Clark Brooks, who, as his full-time gig now, he used to be in the journalism game, decided that he just really loved the statistical side of college football, and as his full-time gig now, he just watches all of the SEC football games play-by-play, logs information, logs stats, logs formations, and everything, and he just posted up there for the masses to use, and however they want to, and it's a really great service. I've used it several times in my stories, and he has some really, really fascinating information about how A&M has played this year and progressed from last year to this year. So let's go ahead and cue up this audio. I'd actually talked with him last night via the miracle of Zoom in my car. And he gave us a little bit of information about his story and a little bit of information about the A&M football team this year. So here we go. What's going on, everyone? We're back with a little bit more My Aggie Nation podcast action here. So grateful to have Clark Brooks, the SEC Stat Cat, on here with us this week. Clark, thanks so much for giving us a few minutes of your time.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, great. So for those of you who are out there and have not been on secstatcat.com, you are missing out on just a treasure trove of great SEC football knowledge. Clark is the mastermind behind it. He goes play-by-play for all kinds of different all the games each week of SEC teams, and you can get deep analytics, you can get play formations, you can get all kinds of great stuff. So I got to start. How did you get started doing all of this?
Well, I am a former journalist. I did the fight in local TV, local media for a while, but the platform didn't really lend itself to nitty-gritty football knowledge. And I always thought, well, look, this is stuff people really like, and that helps separate the discussions as opposed to people just saying, oh, they just pass for a lot of yards or they're good against the run. Well, that doesn't tell me anything. What are they actually doing out there? So while I was doing some work, because I bounced around, I did a few media jobs, both in marketing and just traditional media, like local TV. But I was working for UK Athletics' marketing firm, which ran like the coaches show and all that type of stuff. So I took it upon myself to chart UK and just do all this type of different stuff because we had gotten a new offense coordinator that year, and I took it upon myself to say what exactly we're doing. And one thing led to another. My boss basically encouraged me to do this for the rest of the conference, and 3 short years later, here we are.
Sure. How long? Because you go through every play of every game and break down formations. How long? What's the process each week?
So the process each week starts on most weeks when we have a nooner, a noon kickoff. I'm Eastern Standard Time. So as soon as noon hits, I'm live charting that game. And each game takes about roughly 3 to 4.5 hours, depending on how many passes, how many plays. Passes generally take a little bit longer than runs to chart, just because there's a lot more moving parts involved in terms of routes, average time to throw, area of the field, all these different types of variables to chart and track. But yeah, every week it basically starts on noon on Saturday until about Wednesday night on any given week. I'm charting basically 3 to 4 games a day, and that's basically all I'm doing. And then once the games are done, it's data compiling time and sharing the good knowledge with all the followers and stuff, and just seeing the play calling trends, the advanced analytic risers and fallers week to week, and just all this extra, I would say, transparency with the statistics you really can't find anywhere else. Because you go to ESPN.com, you can't see who leads the SEC in targets. You can on my site in 2 clicks. So just having those stats at the forefront for the fans, I think, is a great asset to have, especially if you're a gambler and you're looking for a little bit more leeway in the gray areas on what side of the line to bet on.
Sure. So what do you have a background beyond just the journalism in mathematics and deep analytics, or is this something that you kind of taught yourself through those experiences?
Well, I have 2 degrees. I have a journalism degree and a business degree. So the business degree, I got to do a lot more, calculus and statistical-based stuff, financial stuff, but I also have an economics minor for my journalism degree. So I have a little bit of like that type of math, but math was never really my strong suit. Like, I'm a writer, I'm a content creator. That's what I am at heart. But I understand that numbers can be very intimidating to people. So I wanted to try and combine the both worlds. I wanted to articulate these new numbers that might be a little bit wacky, a little bit, like I said, intimidating to the average fan, like depth-adjusted accuracy percentage. On its face, it sounds like, what the heck is that? It sounds like something made up. Well, in the right context, it can help you determine who is one of the more accurate passers, because unlike static completion and accuracy percentage, is it caught? Yes, no. Is it accurate? Yes, no. You can pad those stats throwing short a whole lot. Well, just doing a little basic math and tweaking it and making something where you apply more weight to how far something goes downfield, you have a little bit more of a true reflection of someone's true downfield accuracy. So just trying to use the communications background with the little tricks I've gotten through business school and the little financial, like time value of money, that like little calculations you can just steal and reapply to the sports world has just been a real fun aspect for me.
Yeah, that's absolutely fantastic. Is SEC StatCat your full-time gig, or is this a hobby on the side?
So this is my full-time gig. First year, I was still working in local news. We were still working out the kinks for the coding. Didn't really publicly put it out there while we were working on. But last fall and this fall, it's basically been my full-time gig. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Great to find a way to do what you love. So let's put this into context for the Aggies. Just generally, what has stood out to you statistically from this year's Aggie squad that kind of separates them from the pack?
Winning on third down right now. I'll tell you that. And it's kind of highly inflated from that Florida game a few weeks ago, but they're still holding their own. Basically, year over year, they're flat in a lot of areas. They're either within a percentage point or two, an overall success rate, pass success rate, rush success rate, both on early downs. But third down is what jumps off. They were, this was not in counting this past weekend, but going into last weekend, they were second best in the SEC at 58.8. Last year, 39.4 in SEC play on third down. That is a significant jump, almost 20 percentage points year over year. And now on offense, you don't want to try and live and die on third downs. You want to get those conversions on early downs. You don't want to put yourself in a spot. But at the same time, you got to like how your offense doesn't wilter under pressure. I mean, you look across the conference like at Tennessee, for instance, who also finds itself playing a lot of third downs. Well, they have the worst success rate on third downs because of their style of play and just not being able to rise to the occasion. So you look at the trajectories between the two teams. A&M is thought of as a dark horse in the West, while Tennessee's maybe thinking about getting rid of Pruitt. And it's all because of those types of situations and failing to execute. So that definitely jumps out at me. Also, last year, this offense really struggled to get explosive plays outside of Kellen Mond scrambling or in the quarterback design run game. They still have a lot of problems getting explosive gains through the air. But look, their running backs are delivering. Anais Smith and Isaiah Spiller, I think they're both top 5 in yards per carry, and I think they're both top 5 in explosive run rate. So explosive run rate for our vocabulary, that's percentage of runs that gain at least 10 yards or more on average. So you want to have a lot more explosive gains in that, of course, because the last 2 years in SEC play, looking at the numbers, the team that has won the explosive play battle, so that's, volume of passes 20-plus, runs 10-plus, like I just mentioned, have won 75% of the ball game. So racking up and winning the explosive plays has to be an area of importance. And because last year they really couldn't get it anywhere consistently outside of Kellen Mond, and the fact that they're getting it through their ground game, and you look at Kellen Mond's individual numbers, well, they're actually near the bottom of the conference. So he's a complete non-factor in this run game potency. And year over year, we didn't know exactly what it was going to be like because you guys had a lot of transfers in the offseason from that particular position group. And you moved Anais Smith from the slot receiver to the backfield to provide that depth. And, of course, we're seeing he's kind of being moved around the field a little bit more to apply a little bit more downfield explosiveness for the pass game. But, again, you've got to love how the run game is being a lot more potent down to down, a lot more threatening to opposing defenses down to down without having to use necessarily Kellen Mond in that aspect.
Sure. Let's talk a little bit about Kellen too, because I know, like you said, his legs as a part of this offense has not really manifested itself this year. But his if you just look at the basic stats, his completion percentages, and some of his accuracy stats seemingly say that he is a better passer this year. What have you seen from Kellen, and do some of those very base level stats kind of back up the fact that he is an improved quarterback, especially in the accuracy aspect?
He had a slow start, and I'll say that. There's no doubt about it. Even 2 weeks ago. So I like to judge what can a quarterback do on throws with an average depth of target, 10 yards or more downfield, right? So what are you doing throwing downfield? Well, looking at the numbers 2 weeks ago, he was dead last in completion percentage, second to last in adjusted completion percentage, and he had the third highest interceptable pass rate. So this is rate of passes that could have been picked off. Not that were picked off, had the potential to be picked off. And that's a very important distinction when you're trying to determine someone's volatility week to week. So when you're also second to last in yards per attempt, the third worst touchdown rate on those types of throws, it wasn't great. But, I mean, you flash forward to a few weeks later, and his performance throwing the football this past week against Arkansas really helped his numbers. So that statistic I mentioned earlier, depth-adjusted accuracy percentage, well, guess what? He is shot up from being bottom 4 or 5 the first month or so of the season. Well, he's now back up to second in the conference with a 60.2 clip. His success rate is so when I talk about success rate, this is just more of putting like a third down parameter on any given down. So on first downs, you have to gain 5 yards or more, 50% to gain in order to be successful. On second downs, 70% of yards to gain or more to be successful. On third or fourth down, 100%. If you don't convert, obviously it's a failed down. So his passes are still below 50%, and you wanted to get over 50% threshold. But again, the depth-adjusted accuracy is something that's really improved the last couple of weeks. And let's actually see right now how he has been doing on his deep attempts, if he still represents the floor in that regard after the Arkansas game. Because again, if the potency isn't going to come after the catch, and this is an offense that doesn't necessarily like to push the ball downfield on average, when they do throw downfield, they better execute, or else it's just a more wasted rep than an offense that likes to rip it as much as possible. So looking at his success rate right now on 10-plus passes, he has climbed into the top 10. He's now at a 50%. He's completing half of his attempts beyond 10-plus. And in terms of accuracy, he's still kind of middling. He's exactly right at the SEC average. The SEC average is 40.1. his clip is 40%. So he's a relatively average in terms of accuracy. He's on par in terms of getting successful passes, but it's just I am a little bit more bearish on that group of receivers consistently creating enough separation for the explosive plays to come. Sure, they can, like last year and 2 years ago, gaining 10, 15, 18-yard completions, no problem. But it's just getting those game-changing 20, 25, 30-plus yard passes that are just too seldom for my liking.
Sure. So let's extrapolate this to championship football. What have you found? Have you found trends? Have you found specific stat categories that point to the winningest programs? Is there certain ones that you can find, can maybe predict or point towards programs that will have success?
I mean, I like to hone in on that explosive play percentage, like I said before. So last 2 years, explosive plays have determined the winner in 75% of SEC games. So far, it's basically held pat this year. So I mean, if we flash forward and we look at the SEC offenses that are the most explosive, well, I mean, it's like Alabama and Florida. And, Ole Miss is kind of an outlier because their defense is so bad. But you got to remember on the other side of the coin, what explosive plays are they allowing that offsets their own offensive potency? So, like Georgia, of course, Arkansas, of course, that's on the defensive side of the ball. They've been the two best as opposed to limiting teams. So I was actually kind of surprised how A&M was actually able to beat their own expectation and Arkansas's expectation in terms of explosive passes this past weekend. So, I mean, look, you got Ole Miss, Alabama, Auburn, Florida, and A&M in the top 5 in explosive pass rate. All of them except for Ole Miss are positioned to have a run here in this last month plus. So you got to like that. And the ones at the bottom, Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, Kentucky, Arkansas, we have a lot of questions about their offenses moving forward.
Sure. Then I guess we need to talk a little bit of defense before we go here. A&M's defense, the biggest question mark was its defensive secondary. It's always really had a great run stopping presence while Mike Elko has been in Aggie land. Do the numbers match up with that, and how does A&M match up overall in the SEC?
Overall, they're better than most. They're on the good side of average, but I mean, because we have so many good defenses in this conference, it's obviously much harder to stand out. But yeah, you mentioned stopping the run. So one of the aspects that I like to look at and what separates runners from the average to the good ones is what can you do after contact. Basically, any runner with SEC type of capabilities could run to space and make plays, but what can you do making guys miss? How consistently can you make guys miss? So on the defensive aspect, you want to make that as hard as possible with early engagement. Well, after contact, let's change on me. Both after and before contact, A&M is below the SEC average. So they've actually fallen off this past week, which is kind of surprising because heading into the bye week, they were number 1 in yards before contact. So they were getting to runners, and they were making them make a lot of plays after contact. So making them go above and beyond, making them miss tackles and all that type of stuff. But the big issue for me, you already mentioned it, it's allowing explosive passes through the air. So when you play Alabama early in the season, it's going to skew your numbers negatively. But, I mean, we have a pretty decent sample size that kind of balances it out, and they still don't necessarily match up all that great in terms of allowing big gains through the air. So looking at percentage of pass plays that gain at least 15 yards or more, bottom 4 in the conference with only Tennessee, LSU, and Missouri being worse. Basically, 1 out of 5 passes on average gain 15 yards or more. That's not necessarily sustainable. Like I said, playing an offense like Alabama will skew the numbers, but you also have someone like Vanderbilt on your resume who's not a particularly great passing offense. So that's fairly concerning, and that jumps off the page. And in terms of 50-plus, you're still bottom 6 at 11.3. So between 15 and 20%, it's still about between 12 to 20% of your pass plays. It's highly volatile. And in terms of volume of explosive pass plays, tied for second most with 18. So the most in the conference is 20. They have 18.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. That's definitely kind of matches up with what everyone kind of thought with leading in the season and what A&M has shown so far. So let's go back and tell the people, I know you said this is your full-time job. How, if people, other than just going to your website and finding all this great data, which is something I've already done and incorporated into my stories, I tip my cap to you for that. How is some ways that people can continue to find you and support what you're doing?
Well, I need to definitely tweak the subscription model, but since I'm a one-man department and basically the situation this year has just been rather unique, it's put a lot of different responsibilities on my plates where I haven't been able to focus on certain things. Like I've been wanting to tweak certain designs on the site, but right now it's basically the site is a freemium model where you can basically consume everything for free to a certain point, except for the content pieces. So you can view about 3 pieces of content for free until you're forced to pay. But I would always like to encourage people to sign up for that monthly subscription where you can get unlimited amount of free views of content, no matter if it is the statistics, the articles, the one-on-one videos. Like if you don't know what like a smash concept is, you can watch a 2-minute video, be informed and know what it is walking away, and how to recognize it on film and that type of stuff. So there's a lot of different avenues and assets on the site, like pass charts and target heat maps and and advanced analytics like we've been talking about. So definitely check that out. The most of the statistics are shared through Twitter. I do have a Facebook page. I wouldn't say it's necessarily updated all that much. Most of the stuff does go through Twitter and the desktop version of the site. Now, the mobile version does work, but because of all the tables and graphs that I aforementioned, the desktop version blows mobile out of the water. So if you're going to experience this for the first time, I highly recommend doing it on desktop or laptop.
Mm-hmm. And I'll have to close it out with this because I'm pretty curious with a guy who, with your background, with what you've been able to do. Where do you see this going? What are your hopes and dreams for this website and for this new little niche that you carved out for yourself?
I mean, hopefully it keeps going because I think just because of how to engage people. I already mentioned the gambling aspect. That is going to be huge moving forward. So it's trying to just use the data and the resources in our back pockets just to get a little bit more, let's say, refined, a little bit more accurate in our forecasting abilities there. But I mean, I don't want to say that we're going to be like a Saturday Down South or a Pro Football Focus just because we're not exactly quite like that. But at the same time, yeah, we're trying to build our own little niche. And the SEC, it always means more. Just trying to describe this is so convoluted on itself. Like if I had to give an elevator pitch, what is it? It's an X's and O's advanced analytics website for SEC football, which there's a lot to unpack right there. And that's the whole point. It's trying to give nitty-gritty football nerds all the tools and the stats at their fingertips while giving the casual and average fan content where they can grow and expand their knowledge of the game. So it's trying to bring the two together and, again, use my communications background to communicate it all in a easily digestible way that's not intimidating or scares people with nitty-gritty numbers and all that type of stuff.
And then I said I'll close it, but I actually have to close with this one because I think this will be a fun one. Okay. What have you gotten a hold of? Has someone gotten a hold of you and you found out that someone uses your website that kind of you geeked out over? Was there an exciting discovery that someone had discovered you?
Yeah, absolutely. So this was last year. So everyone knows of Joe Brady, right? LSU's passing game coordinator. Well, I found out about a month into the season he was following my website, and I don't know how much he was like using it, but like he followed the account and he liked a few of the posts. So having the play caller or the passing game coordinator, the guru of the offensive transformation down in the Bayou, keeping up with my stuff, that was a kick to say the least. He has since unfollowed since he's been the Panthers coordinator. I don't think the SEC information is as pertinent to him now as it was this time last year, but always like that. And of course, there's a few writers for The Athletic that I got to kick off. some pro football focused employees, people in the statistics field. So anytime that I can get someone's attention that I actually know who they are and they're in this industry, it's certainly gets me going.
Well, man, I really appreciate your time. And listen, out there, if you haven't checked out this website and you're a football fan, you need to do it, because if you're going to be reading a lot of my stuff, I'm going to be citing this guy a lot, because this guy has a lot of great information. So be sure to check him out. Thank you so much for Clark for giving me a few minutes of your time. And we'll be back with a little more My Aggie Nation podcast after this.
Welcome back to the My Aggie Nation podcast, and a big thanks to SEC StatCat coming on with us today. And it's always fun to hear a little bit. I'm not really a numbers guy, but I do like going over sports statistics. Whenever it comes to monetary statistics or whatever, like accounting type stuff, no thanks. But
no, me either.
Yeah. But actual, numbers that have to do with sports is actually kind of fun. So that was kind of neat getting to hear him and talking about all the ins and outs. But Travis, Texas A&M taking on South Carolina this Saturday, one of those northern states in the southern half of the United States. So I don't know. What do you think? I mean, this has been a pretty close game ever since Jimbo Fisher arrived. And I'm not saying that's kind of par for the course, I think, sometimes, because Jimbo's teams never really blow anybody out, especially conference opponents. But it seems like this game has always been kind of neck and neck.
Yeah, that cross-division rivalry. I mean, nothing gets the blood pumping in A&M or Gamecock fans' hearts than playing each other.
For the bottom.
Yeah, the Bonham Trophy. I am the official keeper of the Bonham Trophy. So the keeper of the tradition. So got to make sure that gets brought up every year for this matchup. But I mean, it's look at trophy games for A&M since they've joined the SEC. South Carolina hasn't beaten A&M, and Arkansas hasn't beaten A&M since they joined the SEC. Correct? Am I wrong on that?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. So to A&M, when it comes to a trophy game, I guess you can consider Arkansas a trophy game because they have that gaudy Southwest Classic.
Southwest Conference, or Southwest Classic trophy.
It's
Does Jimbo put that up in his office? Have we talked about that? Like, where is that put?
I don't know, but I feel like I have I should ask about that. But I have a future T Brown story idea percolating on when this thing moves back to campuses. Are they going to keep that trophy, or is Jerry going to take his toys and play elsewhere?
Well, that's kind of what I was wondering about this year, because I'm sure they had already had it made, right? And it was supposed to be in Arlington. So what happened to it this year is my question.
It's a good point. I'll investigate.
So I don't know. It's even though A&M has won 9 straight now, you still got a ways to go before you're going to even up that rivalry there with the Razorbacks.
Yeah, for sure. So, Zach, what do you like in this game? Because I will admit there's been a lot of buzz about a lot of teams that A&M has played coming into this game. I mean, you had a new freshman quarterback who's from Texas, from Vanderbilt. You had Alabama every year. You had Florida and what that game meant. Top 5 matchup. Kyle Trask, Kyle Pittman. Why did I just forget his name? Kyle Pitts. And then you got Mississippi State with the Pirates, and what's going to happen there? And then you had why did I just lose? Arkansas, the big rivalry game, the big
that would be
what was going to happen at well, now we have South Carolina, and honestly, like what's there to be excited about South Carolina?
Other than, like I said earlier, this has been an historically close game, at least in recent years. You've got 2 head coaches that know each other very well, and Jimbo Fisher and Will Muschamp. What was the big story? Or Jimbo told us a couple years ago that they co-owned a house. I guess they had a timeshare in Florida or something like that on the beach.
Oh.
So yeah, I mean they're buddies. They go back to their LSU days. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Jimbo is actually the guy who introduced Will Muschamp to Nick Saban. And so that's how that relationship got started. And so these guys know each other really well. I asked Fisher about that in the press conference earlier this week. What's it like going up against someone who knows you so well and kind of knows your offense in and out, was used to going up against it in practice and everything else? And he says, well, it really doesn't give you much of an advantage because you're able to change so much throughout the years. And, you especially know going up against someone who has seen what you like to throw out there, has seen what you like to do, that it's going to be a deal that you might throw in some kinks, some different stuff offensively, even though I think Jimbo is probably going to stay with the tried and true. He usually does. But that's a little bit of a storyline to it. Also, the fact that A&M has to go on the road in, well, their longest road trip of the SEC slate. Well, it'll be the longest road trip of the regular season because it's all SEC. So, having to go to South Carolina, having to go to Columbia, and then playing at what will probably be a hostile environment, even though the population, or I should say the attendance numbers, will be cut in half or cut to 25%. It's still going to be a loud game. And A&M has played very well on the road, save for Alabama this year. But at the same time, I think if you're used to watching A&M, and especially in years past, you've always kind of got that little, I wouldn't say fear in the back of your mind, but there is something that pops up that says, hey, we've got this really good team. We're favored. What happens if somebody knocks us off? And I think South Carolina very well could be, I don't like to use the word trap game, but it could be something similar to that come Saturday.
Yeah, for sure. Just kind of glancing at some of their initial stats, not great on turnovers. They're, I believe they are second worst in the conference in turning over the ball. Turnovers lost. Yeah, they're second. They have 6 turnovers this season. Only that doesn't make sense. Right up there with Auburn in total turnovers. So at times, this A&M defense has been a little bit ball hawking. Might be able to pull over a few of those. I mean, but when you look at all of their stats, they're just so middle of the road.
Yeah.
Everything, they're not terrible at much. Punt return defense, not great. They allow a decent amount of sacks, so that'll be good for A&M's offensive line. But they're just so middle of the road for everything. I do look here at the sacks and tackles for loss allowed. They're 12th in the conference with 7. I mean, that bodes well for A&M's defensive front. That's really shown that they can get penetration into the pocket as of late.
Yeah. Defensively, Will Muschamp's going to dial up a lot of stuff, and definitely, I'm sure getting to the quarterback has been a big emphasis, always is, of his. And so, you can imagine that's going to be part of the game plan come Saturday. But again, A&M has done a tremendous job in keeping Kellen Mond upright. And the offensive line, and we haven't talked about it a whole heck of a lot on the podcast, but I would have to think that without a doubt, the most improved positions or position, actual part of the team would have to be the offensive line, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they've only allowed 2 sacks so far this year?
Yeah.
And it's crazy because that was the biggest storyline immediately exiting last season is, okay, well, offensive line was probably the worst position group on the team. They're not getting any reinforcements in. And we said it was going to be spring practice where these guys are going to have to elevate their game, and they didn't have spring practice. So, I mean, it's really maybe it's a little bit of a stretch to say they didn't add anybody because actually they added Ryan McCollum. They didn't really have Ryan McCollum for most of last season because of a bulging disc back injury that kept him out of most of the season. But I mean, you can see what a good center can do for an offensive line, i.e. what Eric McCoy was able to do for A&M in years prior to that. But yeah, I mean, if you really want to point to what one thing is different other than just generally getting better, you kind of have to point at Ryan McCollum.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And the fact that he is fully healthy, because even when he did play last year, he was still banged up and bruised and Kenyon Green, I think, is really coming into his own. Carson Green's having a fantastic year as well. So overall, yeah, this offensive line has really taken a big jump. And I think that you have to give a lot of credit to Josh Henson and just the fact that he's been able to coach these guys into one of the best O-lines in the SEC, going up against. And you don't say that lightly. A lot of it depends on who you play, and you say, well, they did pretty well against Bama. And Bama, you're going to be hard-pressed to find a lot of better defensive lines. You're just going to be hard-pressed to find better players than Alabama has. And so the fact that they were able to go into Tuscaloosa and play pretty well there, I think bodes really well for them. But, yeah, I'm interested to see how well A&M is going to do now that they're this front runner. It probably will be in the rest of their regular season games, how they're going to react, how they're going to play going in as the favorite. Because, you go back to the beginning of the year, hey, Vanderbilt, A&M was favored by, 30 points? What was the spread in that one? I mean, it was a tremendous amount. And the fact that they just kind of came out and laid a goose egg. And I would even argue that against Mississippi State, they didn't really play all that well either. At least the offense didn't. So, how are they going to react now that they're the favorites? They're going on the road, and all these teams are going to be looking to knock them off, starting with South Carolina Saturday. How are they going to react? I'm interested to see that.
Yeah, definitely. I'm curious too to see if Kellen Mond can stack great performance on top of a good performance on top of a great performance. I would. You do have to go out and you can mention Clemson 2 years ago. You can mention Mississippi State last year, but I honestly think there could be an argument that Saturday's win over Arkansas might have been Kellen Mond's best game in Aggie land. It wasn't the most exciting. Clemson, he played well and then had some real clutch plays that stood out that kind of kept that game close. That wasn't really needed, but if you look statistically, he threw for 80% on the night, which was his highest percentage of his career. He was the best passer rating of his career. I just think it was an all-around career performance for him, and I'll be interested to see if he can stack another on top of that.
Yeah, that's where the big number pops out at you, right? The completion percentage, just the fact that he was so efficient in running the offense for much of the night, and they were able to score touchdowns on 6 straight drives, which was something that does not come along very often. And he was able to get it done on the ground as well. And I think everybody's been kind of thinking, look, he's this dual threat guy. When are we going to finally see him be able to pull it off and run with it? Besides, say the bowl game last year, when are you going to start seeing more design runs for him? When is he going to be able to really showcase his speed and his talent running the ball? And he did that on Saturday as well as threw it pretty well too. So, yeah, you would be really hard pressed. Florida, he looked awfully, awfully good. And the fact that you were taking on the then number 4 team in the nation, I think would probably get more hype around it. But as far as being efficient and just playing good, Arkansas, he definitely looked really good.
Yeah, and there's something about those Arkansas games that really bring out the best in him. I did a story before last week on that 2017 game, and I kind of didn't – I knew he had big plays in that game, but it didn't really dawn on me until I looked at it that his longest passing play of his career was that 81-yard touchdown pass to Christian Kirk in that game, and the longest run of his career was the 79-yard, which should have been 89-yard run that ran in for a touchdown, but they called it back saying he stepped out of bounds, even though he didn't step out of bounds. It's the longest run of his career. So if you look at him having career days, it always seemed to happen against Arkansas.
Yeah, he shows up big whenever it's playing the Razorbacks, and was able to do that on Saturday. And we'll see if he carries that over into South Carolina. Like I say, against Mississippi State, he really didn't, I think, had that big of a performance. I wasn't overly impressed with the way that he performed against Mississippi State, but if he can kind of get some traction underneath him and start moving things forward and playing this week, I think that'll be good for him for sure.
South Carolina has the conference's second leader in rushing yards per game and just overall rushing yards in Kevin Harris. going to be a test for the A&M defensive front, but it's an A&M defense that has stayed pretty stout, as it always has under Mike Elko. They're the second in the conference in rushing defense, averaging 104 yards per game.
Yeah, and defensively, I think A&M, the score from last week definitely throws you off in the fact that Arkansas was able to get, quotes, a lot of garbage points, and was able to score that final touchdown kind of in garbage time. But Mike Elko, and everybody was worried about following that Alabama game when A&M just got completely blasted. How is this defense going to bounce back? And I still don't think the secondary is a strength of theirs, but it has gotten better. And, against Florida, I think that kind of stood out. Everybody was thinking, wow, how are they going to do against the Gators and Kyle Trask and Kyle Pitts? Well, they did well enough. I'm not saying that they did great, but they did well enough. And then, of course, against Mississippi State, didn't know how they were going to do against Mike Leach's offense. They were able to pull that out. And I think a big testament to that is the defensive line and being able to stop the run game so you can start honing in on pass coverage. And you can kind of take a little bit of a break. You don't have to have those safeties coming up and trying to plug holes. Instead, you're able to kind of sit back and play it that way. So the defensive line is the strength of the defense without a doubt. And so they have really been coming up big. And the fact that they're doing so well against the run, I think, is definitely helped the secondary out some.
Let's talk Hez Jones, because he brought, I think, another level to that wide receiver core coming back from injury, and a guy that you always knew was on and a part of the roster, but you forgot that until he made a few catches this weekend, he hadn't caught a pass since I think it was October of 2018, and you kind of always knew he was on the roster, but it was hard to remember that he did anything, or the fact that he actually hadn't been on the field for that long.
Isn't that crazy? The fact that it had been that long since he had taken the field, and he looked awfully good. Made some big third down catches. Just his veteran presence, I think, is huge too. Being able to be out there and be a vocal leader and a leader by example for those younger guys, that was something that they were missing with Jamon Osborne opting out and Cam Buckley going down. And so you had a very talented but a very young wide receiver core. And then Caleb Chapman goes down, and you get even younger than that. So the fact that you have a veteran presence out there, somebody who can kind of tell the guys, hey, this is what you need to do. This is how it's done. And he's also been, and he told us on Monday that he had been spending that time while he was out, sitting at practice, listening from the coaches, learning from the coaches. So he has gotten that view and that perspective from the sideline in saying, hey, this is what needs to happen here, and this is what you need to do in this situation. And yeah, the physical tools have always been there, but I think the mental part of it maybe has gotten even better for him over the last couple of years.
And yeah, for sure. I think with, a lot of the conversation is people like their shiny new toys, and a lot of people have wanted to see Damon Demas, Moose Muhammad, some of these good wide receivers they pulled in as recruits in the offseason. But I think when you add Hez Jones into this mix, Chase Lane has proven that he kind of has separated himself among the pack. And then you have Aniyah Smith. There's few times that A&M runs four wide receivers out there, because if you're going to run actual four wide, they're probably going to flex out Jalen Weidermeier or send Aniyah Smith out of the backfield. I just don't see a place for those guys this year.
Yeah, it's not for a lack of talent. It's not like, as far as we know, Demas is not in the doghouse with Jimbo. It's not a situation like that. It's the fact that you have so much out there already in veteran guys, and the fact you weren't able to have spring ball, and so you wonder how much of the playbook he's able to grasp at this point. Because as a true freshman, how much are you able to know at this point? And so, yeah, a lot of people are wondering, hey, why the heck is he not out there? You've got this big-time playmaker. You need to be putting him in the fold. I think he would rather work him in slowly than just kind of throw him to the wolves, so to speak, and risk that being a step back in his career and his progression. So when you, like you said, Chase Lane has really stood out now that Hez Jones is back in the mix. Anaya Smith is out there all the time as well. And, of course, Jalen Weidermeier, who you could argue is probably your leading receiver at tight end. The fact that you have all of those pieces there already and they have meaningful playing time coming into the season, yeah, it is difficult to kind of plug and play and put a guy in. And the other thing, too, in the fact that you have an SEC-only schedule. I think if you had a regular schedule where you did play 3 cupcakes, let's call it what it is, where you played 2 or 3 cupcakes, you would have an option to put him out there and get him some meaningful playing time, along with a lot of your other younger guys. But frankly, A&M doesn't have that luxury this year. Nobody does. And so, people just need to be patient. If you got to trust your coach. If Jimbo needs him out there, Jimbo will put him out there. But right now, it looks like he's playing pretty well with some receivers that he's got.
Yeah, I'm trying to look it up here, and he might have bumped down after last week, but Jalen Weidermeier actually, according to SEC StatCat, who we talked to earlier, has been A&M's deepest threat this season. If you go to, and I'm trying to scroll here fast, but first down percentage. He has these stats here on is it maybe explosive play? No, he has the percentages here on downfield average depth. Okay, so average depth of target. Well, okay, he's dropped down after last week. He was leading the team. Now Chase Lane's out there. Caleb Chapman's, of course, out there. But Weidermeier still, for a tight end, average depth of target is 8 yards, which probably is about right.
That doesn't surprise me, though, that he was leading everything.
Right. He has 34 targets to Anaya Smith's 36. So yeah, I mean he's out there, and he's not just running your digs across the line. He's going downfield and making plays.
And he had a couple of big catches for quite a few yards last week. And A&M doesn't take a whole heck of a lot of shots downfield. And I know that's been a bugaboo for some fans. They're saying, hey, why aren't we attempting to get these big home run plays? But fact of the matter is you really haven't needed them in any game besides Alabama. And so and in Florida, when you did need them, you were able to pull off a couple of them. But there were times when Mon was off the mark. And so I think, 10 to 15 yards is really, or 15 or less is really his comfort zone. And that's where they like to stay. And that works out well when you have a pretty good tight end that's able to make catches over the middle.
For sure. Let's talk one more thing. And I'm going to preview my game day feature for this week for Saturday, because it's one that was kind of pretty fascinating and interesting. Talk to Brian Gossett, the assistant equipment manager for the A&M football team. He is the man who is tasked and in charge of making sure that Anaya Smith has the right number on when he goes out to punt return.
Yeah.
And just it's a job he's done in the past, and just some interesting little tidbits about that, because it's funny to kind of joke and roll your eyes every time the ref has to turn on his microphone and announce that number 0 is now number 19 and number 19 is now number 0. Going back and forth, because him and Miles Jones, who's also number 0, are on the kick return team. And, I was talking to him, and I said, I've been here for 5 seasons, I think now. And I don't remember, this being this prevalent. And he said, well, no, that's because under Kevin Sumlin, if this was going to be an issue, one of the players had to change their number. He wasn't going to deal with this number switcheroo thing. But so the last time this has been an issue was under Sherman. And it was a little bit of a deal then. It was a big time deal when Coach Fran was here, he said, because he's been there. Gossett's been here since then. And he said the interesting thing was back then, this is against the rules now, but back then you could take a jersey and take scissors and cut down the side of it and sew in either a zipper or Velcro.
Oh, that's cool.
And so that way you can just slide it on and zip it up and then go. But now that's against the rules. But back then you couldn't. I believe you couldn't put it over the existing jersey. Now you can put it over the existing jersey like they do. So Anias keeps his number 0 jersey on. They have the backup number 19 jersey that they slide over his head. And he said the getting it on isn't the hard part. The getting it off is the hard. And he said their biggest snafus was last week against Arkansas. There was one time where he started to try to pull Anias's hair on accident
instead of the jersey,
right? And then another time that he didn't get his elbow all the way out of the jersey sleeve, and they actually picked him up off the ground.
Oh, because you're just having to do it with so much force in such a little amount of time so quickly.
Right. So
I mean, I don't really get it. I'm kind of with Kevin Sumlin on this, I'm just like, hey, just pick a number and stay with it. I don't know why you got to go back and forth like you do, but the fact that Jimbo is accommodating for it is kind of surprising to me. And hey, man, whatever floats his boat. If he wants to have 0 when he's out there on offense, but 19 when he's returning punts, then more power to him.
Yeah, and they get the job done. I mean, and it's a whole process. There is, Gossett basically has to keep track of the down and distance on everything, and if it gets to be third down, they're getting that jersey on him. And there's been times where the other team had a third down and long, and they got the jersey on him, and they ended up converting. And so he'll have to ask him, hey, you want to get it off? And a lot of times he'll just keep it on the sidelines until they get either the punt team's rolling out there, or they get into a range where they're not going to punt it anymore, and then he'll get it off. But he said most of the time they've been lucky and had a TV timeout after the punt return. There's been a few that they haven't, but they haven't had any issues of him getting in late or anything like that. They kind of have it down to a pretty sweet science of fast wardrobe changes. So you know me, I always like those really interesting deep cut aspects of the game and what goes on behind the scenes on some of these things. And
the game behind the game.
That's one of those. Yeah. The pit stop, the NASCAR pit stop that Anias Smith has to make each time that he goes out for a kick return.
Needs an oil change.
Yeah.
Run him over to the sideline, get an oil change.
So be sure to check this Saturday edition of the Eagle or theeagle.com for my write-up of that. Shameless pitch. But, yeah. So, Zach, what do you think? I was pulling up I haven't checked what the line is today.
I believe it was 10 and a half. Oh, has it gone down that much? Wow.
No, I think it opened at 7.
Oh, I think it's gone up some, if I'm not mistaken. Normally it goes the other way, right? Normally it gets smaller.
But I mean, I don't know.
I'm looking here. Yeah, they're right at 10. At least that's on ESPN.
Okay, yeah, that's what I'm pulling up. So, yeah, 10. 10 points. Field goal and a touchdown against this A&M team. The ESPN predictor has A&M as a 53.3% winner.
Oh, wow.
We're dealing with percentages now.
Percentage-wise.
All over everything. Over-under is 59. Spread is 10 points. Does the South Carolina cover the spread?
I don't think so. I talked about that this is normally a close game. I don't think they're going to get within 10. I think it's going to be more like 14. So I'm going to say that they're not going to cover the spread.
Here is, and this is a real easy key to the game that is kind of like, well, duh. A&M is second in the country in third down conversion percentage. They've converted almost 60% of their third down attempts. If you're a team that is converting 60% of your third down attempts, especially a team that gets to third down a lot because they're trying to control the clock, you're going to win ball games. And so if they continue to stay at that clip, there's no way that South Carolina covers. You're right. I think I agree. I don't think they cover. I think this game will maybe not be as lopsided as Arkansas, but I think it's going to be shades of Arkansas again.
Yeah. I mean, the final score I think is going to be there. I'm going to say 34-21. I think it'll be somewhere around in that range. So, that would be 13 points. So somewhere between 10 to 14. I think is likely where we'll end up. But I don't think South Carolina's going to be able to cover the spread on that.
I might go like 35-17. I could see this one getting out of hand.
Okay.
Because South Carolina leans so heavily on the run game, and A&M has just been so good at shutting that down for the most part. Really and truly, the running that's hurt them the most is quarterback scrambles, and that's not necessarily all that you'll get here with South Carolina. Give me a little bit of a lopsided win.
Okay, all right, putting it out there then. Big lopsided win from Travis Brown this week. The Aggies going to defeat South Carolina in the vaunted battle for the Bonham Trophy.
Yeah, wherever that is, in the Alamo basement. Well, everybody, thanks so much for joining us for another week of the My Aggie Nation podcast. Me and Cease are going to be out there in Columbia.
Oh, yeah. Y'all are making the trip, huh?
Checking out.
Aren't you?
No, we're flying. So we'll be out there. We'll see all the action and report on that. And then we'll be back again to break it all down here. So for Zach Taylor, I'm Travis Brown. This is the My Aggie Nation podcast. We'll see you next week.
It seems like every day, everything just has a way to must have it seems. But if we don't watch what we're doing, our hearts will get ruined by silly things. Good love ain't easy, girl, we know that's true. And if we want to keep it, we gotta watch everything that we do, yeah. Don't wanna make sure, my baby, make sure you're sticking with me.